Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Lisa Oligas. As students head back to school, they'll face a common problem: viruses. In fact, Missouri health officials recently reported a confirmed case of internationally imported measles and possible exposures in the St. Louis region. Our health department and physicians want families to know that it is time to get the proper vaccines to be able to attend classes. In this program, we will talk with a Mercy pediatrician, a nurse with the Joplin Health Department, and a representative from the Wilcoxon Health Center on the MSSU campus on how students can protect their health from infectious diseases. We begin our conversation with Dr. Omar Mohammed, a pediatrician at Mercy Clinic on 50th Street. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's start with just the basics. What are those vaccines? We know from the time of birth, we're starting to vaccinate our babies. What are the most important ones as kids head to school?
So the most common ones would be stuff like chickenpox, varicella, measles, mumps, because those are viruses that actually are pretty common, and kids, when get together, and if they're not immunized, they can spread it to one another. And the other big one would definitely be the flu.
The flu, of course. So is timing important when you're giving vaccinations to children?
Absolutely. The way the CDC and WHO and other health organizations come up with schedules to have vaccinations done at a particular time, they keep in mind that kids at that age group are more vulnerable to them compared to others, so it's absolutely necessary. That being said, you can always do a catch-up schedule, and we do it all the time with our older patients as well.
So is it important to make it part of a regular visit to the pediatrician? Is it easier to do it that way?
Yeah. Imagine if a parent has 3 or 4 kids and they will want to come in at the same time for well-child visits and get everybody vaccinated at the same point. And that's the best strategy when it comes to getting everybody immunized in one visit, versus having to bring one kid and then the other and then the other one after. That being said, a lot of clinics, including the one I work at, we do offer nurse visits where you can just come and get the vaccination. You don't per se have to schedule a doctor's appointment and wait or get that vaccination that way. You could always get it through the nurses.
Awesome. So what are some of the concerns parents might have about vaccines? I mean, for years there have been some concerns about possible causing relations to autism at one time. So what are some of the concerns that they expressed to you?
Like you mentioned, autism is a big one, learning disabilities. One thing you have to realize, certain vaccinations, including, I'll let you know, the chickenpox vaccine can sometimes cause high fevers. And that in certain age groups, especially kids from 6 months to about 15 months or so, can cause something called febrile seizures. So they would get this vaccination and it would have a seizure. It's because of the fever associated with the vaccine, not the vaccine itself per se. So those are some of the misnomers that we clear out for our patients and let them know.
Is it rare?
It is very rare, absolutely. But it's one of those things that we do have to tell our parents that, hey, this is something that could happen.
What are some of the other side effects that parents might need to anticipate with their child maybe being fussy or something like that afterwards?
Yes, they can develop a low-grade fever. They can be irritable, fussy. The biggest one that we see is where they give the shot, that area can become indurated, or it can get erythematous, and it just becomes a little bothersome. So we tell parents that you can apply some ice, some warm compresses, and worst comes to worst, you can actually give them Tylenol or ibuprofen according to their age.
You mentioned one of the myths. What are some of the other myths you might have to dispel when it comes to vaccines?
So the biggest one, that apart from the autism one we hear, is my kid will develop a seizure or a seizure disorder or epilepsy. The ones that I haven't heard here, but in America, but I've heard it overseas and whatnot, is it will cause impotency. And I don't recall any studies that have showed any relationship between any vaccinations and impotency in that sense, or even with autism.
Yeah. So as kids go back to school, do you also advise that they get the COVID vaccine, and should it be in tandem with some of these other boosters that they might be getting, or should it be separate?
You could get as many vaccines in one doctor's visit as possible, as long as you're agreeable and you know that, hey, these are the possible side effects from the vaccination. With regards to COVID, we knew what happened a few years ago. The whole world shut down. It per se has been a little mild, I would say, at this time, but that doesn't mean, we back off.
Right.
We need to be safe. We need to be precautious. And part of that means everybody as an individual of the community have to do their part. and getting vaccinated, still practicing adequate hand hygiene and social distancing as needed is always a wonderful option. And it will not only just prevent COVID, it could also help with minimizing the spread of flu, which the flu season will start in a few short weeks. And what we saw last year, how prolonged it went into May, it was surprising. And we anticipated it's because we didn't see as much flu in prior years is because of our hand hygiene, her personal protective equipment, and the social distancing we were practicing.
Right. And I know one of the other things that came out, there was a lot more whooping cough after we let down from masking. Is that something that also can be a risk now for students as they go back to school? It
could be, because the pertussis vaccine, it actually is known that the protection you get from it wanes with age. So sometimes that's why it's important to get that vaccination. And the most vulnerable people for that vaccine would be kids less than newborns and the elderly. So yes.
So they wouldn't have the problem at school, but...
They wouldn't, but they will be able to spread it around though.
Ah.
Yes.
Because more than one child in the family.
Yeah. And if you're vaccinated, you may not get as bad of a reaction to it. But again, that being said, just because you're vaccinated doesn't guarantee you won't get it, because like we talked about, the vaccination, it means, the immunity means.
Why is it so important? I mean, when we know kids are going to be in this environment, that they have that vaccination as protection? I mean, because are they more at risk because they're in a group of kids?
Absolutely. And then a lot of them go back home and they have siblings that are younger who haven't been vaccinated or haven't completed this series, or they have grandparents or somebody who may be immunocompromised, and they put them at risk as well. So it's a household risk.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, do you have special clinics? Is it best just to make an appointment? What's the best way for someone to get in touch? And is it also a good thing just to have the kids checked out physically before they head to school?
Absolutely. Right now, I know in the older kids, sports physicals will be a big thing with different sports seasons coming up. So that gives us an opportunity to lay eyes on them and, check them out, provide clearances. We've actually already started doing that. With regards to vaccines, it's for the kids and parents' convenience. They can come into clinics whenever they can, and that's why we have this option where they can, instead of booking a doctor's visit, they can actually do a nurse visit and get vaccinations, and then maybe come back a few weeks later, depending on which other vaccinations they didn't get and whatnot.
Yeah. And what's important to know when it comes to getting these vaccinations is are some more prevalent than others when it comes to these diseases? Are we anticipating more flu this year?
Absolutely, yes, we are, because flu is one of those viruses that tends to mutate every year. So the vaccination that you get, let's say the ones we're going to give out this year, is going to be based on the most common variant from last year. So it will provide protection for the most common variants from last year, but we don't know what we anticipate or what we will get this year, and that will come into consideration the following year.
And what are your recommendations for the COVID vaccine? How young is it now approved for children, and is the same dosage recommended now? I mean, we know that the virus has evolved. Has the vaccine evolved as well a little bit?
Absolutely. There's vaccinations and booster schedules, and now they have them approved for kids as young as 6 months. It's something similar to flu. We recommend flu vaccines for all kids 6 months and older. It's the same thing with the COVID vaccine as well.
All right. Well, Dr. Muhammad, thank you for sharing all your expertise with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
When we come back, we will talk with a nurse from the Joplin Health Department about vaccinations for older children and those heading to college. As we go to break, a look at the recommendations for getting vaccinations. Welcome back to Newsmakers, where we are bringing focus to vaccinations needed as students head back to school. Joining our conversation is registered nurse Misty Hammer from the Joplin Health Department. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So we have talked with a pediatrician about some of the requirements for younger children, but what are the vaccinations that are overall required for students going back to school? Because there's some for different age groups, correct?
Yeah, our kindergartners need DTaP, and they also need polio. They can get that in a combo vaccine, so that's one shot.
Which is nice.
Yes, very nice. And then varicella and MMR, and that can be combined as well.
So in layman's terms, what do those mean? Because I know it's measles, mumps, rubella, but
Yes.
tell us what those stand for. DTaP is several things.
Tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis.
So, and those are all, I mean, it's important and helpful to have them combined into one shot, isn't it? Doesn't that make it easier for the children?
It makes it easier for everyone. Parents, children, nurses, everybody. So in some cases we can't do those combo vaccines, but most of the time we're good to go.
So those are for kindergartners, and then things change as they get a little older, right?
Yeah, whenever they're going into the 8th grade, they're going to need what's called the Tdap, which is really just the the adolescent to adult tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis, and then they will get their first dose of the meningococcal vaccine, the ACWY, or the MCV4, as some people know it.
Which is alphabet soup to the average person.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
It protects against 4 different serogroups against meningococcus bacteria. So,
And that's highly contagious, typically?
Oh yeah. We want to, and meningitis acts fast. So if you don't get that vaccine, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to,
And how would meningitis impact someone? Like, give us an idea of like what the disease is when it does happen. Is it flu-like symptoms that graduate very quickly?
Yeah. Yes. Someone could potentially die within 12 hours. You could lose limbs, you could lose digits, neurological impairment, all kinds of that.
So meningitis, very scary.
Loss of hearing, yeah.
Important to get that vaccination.
Yes. So the first one you get is 8th grade shots usually, and then whenever you're a senior in 12th grade, you'll get that second dose of that. So.
And then that's preparing students to go to college, which...
whenever you're getting ready to go to college, we usually recommend to get the meningitis B vaccine, which is the 5th strain, but it's in its own shot. And it isn't a requirement of the state, but it is highly recommended. And it's a 2-dose series as well.
And many colleges actually
Yes,
require that
yeah.
too.
If you're going to be staying in the dorms, they want you to have that.
And we're going to talk more about that later. But as I said at the start of the show, there has been a case of measles that has popped up in the St. Louis region, and it seems strange because we had eradicated that once in the United States.
Yeah.
What's the concern about cases like this coming back?
If you're getting vaccinated the way that you're supposed to be getting vaccinated, then that highly decreases your chance of that happening. Vaccinations help prevent outbreaks, and because there are those who can't get immunizations because they're immune compromised. So really you're protecting yourself, but you're also protecting your fellow man. So,
and if you were to get something when you have a vaccination, it's usually a milder case, correct?
Right, yeah, it decreases the symptoms considerably.
So who can get their shots at the Joplin Health Department? Because not everyone can, correct?
We take care of the Joplin residents, anyone who works or attends school in Joplin City we can take care of.
And then for anyone in Carl Junction, Webb City, what's the recommendation there?
Jasper County is their go-to health department. And then Joplin, is kind of unique because we serve Jasper and Newton County. We kind of are split in the middle, but if they're outside of city limits, then they would go to Jasper or Newton.
And now pharmacies can offer some vaccinations, correct?
Yes. Some of our area pharmacies are really good about helping out with those vaccines.
So can a student be refused entry into school if they don't have their vaccinations, and how do you work with the schools about this?
We we will send out appointment cards to the schools if they've make their appointment with us. We send those, we fax them every day. We have a stack that we fax to them. If they don't make that appointment, however, we can't guarantee that they won't get kicked out of school because it is a state requirement.
Okay, so it really is important to make that appointment now.
Yes.
Because school's not.
The sooner the better.
The sooner the better, yeah. So when do you recommend the COVID vaccines, and do you give those as well?
Yes, we do COVID vaccines. If they've already had the 2-dose series, then really all that's required to be up to date is 1 bivalent. And that's for most ages, 6 months and up.
Okay, so it has expanded.
Yeah.
Is there a recommended timing for getting that vaccine or getting the other vaccines?
Well, no, you can get them at the same time. Sometimes we don't want to give too many vaccines all at the same time because of the side effects, but getting the disease is way worse than the side effects either way. So
important to get those vaccines.
Yeah.
And does this kind of create a surge of patients for you all? How does that work?
Oh, yes. Yeah. It will be like a desert in July, and then August hits, and we know it's August because the phone will be ringing off the hook, but we want to get all those people taken care of.
And are there certain days of the week, or can they make an appointment almost any time?
We're open Monday through Friday. Calling is the best way to get your appointment. And we're open from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So,
okay. So they just call the health department?
Yep.
The best way to call in on the phone?
Yes. It's 417-623-6122.
6122, all right? It's not just little kids, but college students. Why is it so important for this meningitis vaccine for college students? I mean, as they head to school, are they more at risk?
Yes, they are more at risk because they are in that more of a group setting, group living, dorms, that sort of thing. That puts them at higher risk. Military recruits would be at higher risk too because they're all going to be in the barracks together. So same kind of idea with the college students. And we just don't want to take any chance with meningitis.
And what is the health department feeling like you're going to be prepared this year for having enough vaccines for everyone when it comes to COVID and the flu and the flu vaccine? Are we anticipating?
Oh yes, we already got our August order in and we're ready to go. We're primed and ready.
All right. Well, Misty Hammer, thank you so much for telling us about it. Well, hopefully the kids will all and their parents will get them their appointments to get vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we had the opportunity to join Misty during a vaccination appointment for a student heading to college. Let's take a look.
Jacob Teeter is heading to Fayetteville for college, but before he moves, he's making a stop at the Joplin Health Department for a meningitis B vaccination.
I am living in the dorms where there's 500 people in my building. Lots of close contact, so just another reason to be careful and take the proper precautions to stay healthy.
He gets a shot from meningococcal B. 4 other strains of meningitis are covered by a separate vaccine, the MCV4 many get in high school.
And it is going to be the one that covers the 4 serogroups A, C, W, and Y.
And it's something that is required to live in the dorms at Missouri Southern State University.
You will need proof of your meningitis MCV4 vaccine on or after your 16th birthday.
And all students need to submit a health history form along with proof that they've had 2 doses of MMR, vaccines for measles, mumps, and rubella, as well as a TB risk assessment.
The TB risk assessment's on MedProctor as well. You'll answer yes or no questions about your risk factors for tuberculosis, and that determines whether you need a TB test.
All that needs to be submitted to MedProctor by October 1st, 23 to avoid a hold being placed on your account so that you can enroll in your next semester.
For Jacob, getting a vaccine is less about the laws and more about another layer of protection, whether meningitis or even COVID.
And it's just good to be safe and be careful because you never know, it still lingers around. And it's good to get vaccines.
We're back, and we just heard from a student about getting the vaccine for meningitis B. It's important on any college campus, including here at MSSU. Joining our conversation now is Julie Stamps, a nurse practitioner at the Wilcoxon Student Health Center here at Missouri Southern. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Good afternoon.
Yes, so let's talk about meningitis B.
Okay.
Is it something that's a big concern, and does the college have a policy about making sure students are vaccinated?
So what we look at are risk factors. If you're going to be living in campus housing, meningitis B is very important to be vaccinated. If you're living at home, is it a recommended vaccine? Yes. Would it be required? No. So the confusion with meningitis vaccine comes because there's actually two different kinds of vaccine. There's meningitis A, C, Y, and W, and then there's meningitis B. Meningitis B did come after. It's very important, but the most common forms that we see are the A, C, Y, and W. So the Missouri legislation covers A, C, Y, and W for the college campuses. Okay. Meningitis B still remains a recommended vaccine, but it's not required for student housing. If the individual was my child and I was making a decision, I would get both for them to come to college.
Yeah. I mean, because as Misty told us, it's really a very dangerous disease if you get meningitis, probably of any type, but some can be very, very extremely quickly to act, correct?
I think one of the things that we are definitely blessed with are the advances in medicine since maybe you and I were in college.
Yeah.
There weren't meningitis vaccines available.
Right.
But the problem with that is fewer people remember the stories of such and such got meningitis, and by the evening, honestly, they had passed away. So even though vaccination has helped decrease those cases, as time goes on, people forget the importance of them. So then they start wondering, does my child really need this?
Right.
So one of the things I always, point out to students is meningitis can be a life-threatening disease. It can cause catastrophic effects. And if we can prevent that from happening, why wouldn't we want to do that? Vaccination, I think, is a personal choice, but I think that you need proper education about what your vaccines are doing. So I think that, looking at the guidelines that pediatricians follow, always a good place to start, because a lot of families have trust and confidence with their pediatricians.
You bet.
And then looking at other resources, our health departments, college health centers. I have all kinds of written information patients can come pick up from us so that they can learn more about the vaccine so they can make an informed choice for themselves.
And when it comes to meningitis, I mean, it really is highly contagious. So
Yes.
it's not just that it can really do damage to you, but it could spread very quickly especially in a populated kind of space.
So one thing that we have to look at are our classrooms. With us being a university, we have a very mobile society. So we have students that travel on the weekends. We have students that work in healthcare, different places that they encounter all types of bacteria and viruses. Then we put them in a classroom. It's not exactly like a high school classroom where you're staying with the same group of people. You're more mobile. So you're moving from building to building, classroom to classroom. So exposures could start becoming, definitely in the hundreds just by the end of your day. Right. So, for a college campus, germs can travel quickly. We want to minimize, the hazards of being in a classroom setting. And one of those things would be to be properly vaccinated, good hand washing, making sure that you're taking good care of yourself, healthy eating, proper sleep, all of those types of things that sometimes our college students get really busy and forget to do.
They don't sleep enough. Immune supports. I mean,
Yes.
kind of a lot of the vitamin C is important. Is it also, though, I mean, we talked about meningitis, but there are plenty of other infectious diseases that come with flu season. Do you recommend that college students have other vaccinations as well?
Of course. So looking at the time of the year that we are for back to school, flu vaccine typically will be starting to come into stock about September. October, November is usually a really good time to get your flu shot. Sometimes especially first year students have never been away from home. So they're trying to figure out, how do I get vaccinated? What will I do? I don't have a primary care doctor here. In the state of Missouri, we're actually pretty blessed now that pharmacies are able to vaccinate for us. So students can actually schedule an appointment at Walmart. You can go online, Walgreens, CVS, Target, and be able to get vaccinated. If you have health insurance, a lot of the pharmacies are able to bill your health insurance for you. So you might be out of pocket at nothing.
I was wondering, is there a cost typically, or some of the vaccinations vaccinations
It
free?
honestly depends on where you receive the vaccine and what type of coverage you have. So if you have no health insurance, our community clinics honestly have funding available, so they're able to help provide vaccinations for not just pediatric patients, but also adults. So that's a perfect place that we utilize their services. The health center, as time has gone on, we have decreased the amount of vaccine I order. It's not because I don't think they're necessary, it's just like with the meningitis, ACYW, students in Missouri are vaccinated with that during high school. And so I have fewer students that need it when they start school here. The same way with flu vaccine is we can do flu. I have that available here, but we have a lot of students that now work in hospitals, so they get vaccinated at the hospital level. And just convenience. Some students, between class schedules and those types of things, they need an evening appointment, and it's easier to do the Walmart pharmacy. But we do stock some immunizations. We do utilize offices so that we're looking for students to be able to get the best deal that they can for their vaccine, not the most expensive price that we can get.
And do you intend to offer the COVID vaccine?
So COVID vaccine in the beginning, we did primary series here. It was a very exciting time for campus. But as time went on, the way those vaccines are bundled in the amounts, I was not able to give those doses. So we decided just to let the health department and the pharmacy be able to give COVID boosters.
And finally, just what kind of illnesses typically present to you at the clinic that you have to deal with college
So
students?
I would say probably our top three would be respiratory infections. This time of year, you're around a lot of people. Immune systems get down. Allergies still play a little bit of a role, but just when we're getting in those big groups, viruses travel very quickly. Then I would say skin infections are very common. And then we also see our fair share of like urinary tract, sexually transmitted infections as well. So with all of those things, we encourage, early testing, having students be evaluated. One of the things that we are able to offer would be an appointment time for them to come in and talk with the nurse, a check of vitals, recommendations. Do we think this is just a virus that needs some over-the-counter medicines, or is this something that maybe you need to see me for?
And overall, just good advice.
Yes.
Of where they can get their vaccine.
Yes, and we are always happy to help students out. They can come by, they can call us, and we want to make sure that they stay healthy during their college experience.
All right. Julie Stamps, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And that concludes this edition of Newsmakers. Thanks to all our guests for explaining the importance of vaccinations and how you can protect yourself or your child from infectious diseases. Thank you for watching Newsmakers. I'm Lisa Allegas.